pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
of
States
the
of
United
America
States of America,
and
and
to the republic for which it stands, one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice
justice for all.
Hey, welcome to our March 8th Tiverton School Committee meeting. For motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Take a roll call vote. Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Yes, Mrs. Polish.
I vote yes. What did I say?
You didn't say anything.
You say anything?
Okay. Anyone signed up for open forum? I skipped that. Carolyn?
Nope, we have nobody.
Item, what the heck? All right. Item 7A, final ride capital plan approval.
No, Dr. Larkin, item 7A is review stage 1 and 2 school building authority.
Yeah, for some reason I've got,
Was that the last agenda maybe?
I don't know. All right, yeah, you're right. It's so item 7A, review stage 1 and 2 school building authority process. Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And actually, before we start new business, I'd ask the committee to consider switching the order and have A followed by C, then B. I think it would make sense to hear from School Building Authority, followed by RGB with an outline of their plan, then followed by your discussion.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we move new business from ABC to ACB. Is that?
That is
covered?
correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
Mrs. Polish, did I say it wrong? I pronounced it.
No, you didn't. You didn't ask me last time, so I just
Oh,
volunteered.
I thought I did. All right.
No.
I have
Yes.
it.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Ms. Farnworth,
Yes.
I vote yes. All right, so we are up to item something, 7A.
Yep, 7A.
Okay, Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Ms. Chairperson. And we're fortunate, as the committee has requested, to learn a little bit more about the process of submitting a project to the School Building Authority. There's stages to go through. We want to make sure this is crystal clear to everyone, and that as we begin this process over again, that all questions are answered. We're very fortunate tonight to have the Director of the School Building Authority, Mario Carino, here with this evening. He's going to give you a brief presentation and certainly is available to answer all your questions. So Mario, thank you so much for joining the Tiverton School Committee and the Tiverton community. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanquioni. Before I begin, I find it helpful that if anyone has any questions that they want to ask, I can incorporate them in the presentation so they're answered. Is there anything that's pressing that you want answered within the first 5 minutes of this presentation? This will be easy then. Okay, so we'll do the quick overview and then we can answer more detailed questions. But in general, we have, it's what's known as the necessity of school construction process, which is a multi-stage process. Stage 1 is you identify your needs, and then stage 2 is where you propose solutions to your needs. In some ways, this is, it's not as just black and white because you've actually just done this process. And one of the more complex things with school construction is that, there's a technical process and there's another process, which is a political process, which includes engaging stakeholders from the municipal side as well as others. So during the stage 1 and stage 2, communities are required to form school building committees, which have representation of both municipalities, members of the public, members of the town. And while under Rhode Island general law, school committees have complete care and control of their school facilities. Well, funding comes from the municipality. So we have seen that the most successful school building committees are the ones that engage the towns early and include multiple members on their school building committees. That just greatly increases the odds of you getting, especially if you're seeking a bond, it greatly increases those odds. So we'll start there. So stage one is when you identify your needs. I believe Tiverton sent a stage one in on February 15th, as well as a stage two. So we can, if we want to bring up the previous process, we can. If not, we can just focus on the one moving forward. But so there's two ways to approach this educational facility master planning, right? There's a theoretical way, which is you go through the stage one and stage two, you build consensus, you identify your needs. Those needs are expressed as a 5-year plan, and then you present those plans to the town. And in some ways, the need drives the budget, and if it fits in within available bonding capacity, that gets approved. That's one way to master plan. That's perhaps the most traditional way. There's another approach, which is becoming more common now, is when you engage the town before you begin this process to find out their willingness to issue you a bond. So in some ways, they might set a budget for you that you'll get local support, and then you retro build your plan based on the budget. And that's becoming more and more common throughout the state. We have a question, please. Lori, I see your hand is up.
Hi, sorry about that. I was raising my hand because I'd like to yield my time. The agenda item that I'd actually like to speak to is the budget and the first reading of the policy 739 school committee agendas. Can I yield my time and come back at that point, please?
That isn't really a question that makes too much sense to me, but right now we're talking about the process of the capital expenditures for the school.
Yes,
committee.
I'm
It's
aware.
not the agenda item right now.
Sure, but I just got let in, and the last thing that I heard was open forum was closed after I had intended to speak during open forum, and I'm texting and I'm hearing that from other people too. So I'm not sure of the procedure, and I don't want to waste the committee's time, but I did want to speak to those two things, and I wanted to make sure that I got recognized when I did,
Yeah,
please.
so open forum is passed, so you can come to the next meeting, or when we open up to public questions or discussions at different points on the rest of the agenda, you'll be recognized. So anyway.
I very much appreciate that, because the moment I was let into the meeting, I heard you say open forum. You asked if there was anybody that wanted to speak, and I had just been let in, and there was no way for me to respond in time. So, but thank you. I'll come back and speak.
We have it at most meetings. So anyway, Mr. Carino.
Thank you, sir. So in many cases with Tiverton, and I guess this won't just be a straight presentation, but I will also ask questions. Have you engaged the town recently to determine their willingness to consider issuing debt for school construction projects in the town of Tiverton, or has that not been approached yet?
I don't think that's been an explicit discussion. No.
Okay, so I would consider, I would suggest, I'm also, some know this, right? I'm also a fellow school committee member of the town of Lincoln, so I'm well aware of, and I thank you all for your public service. I also do the same in my community. But when we want to engage, and when we're even considering issuing debt, you need to have those discussions early on, because if there is no appetite for, let's say, a $20 million bond, just to make a round number, then you shouldn't be designing a $20 million solution, because it actually costs money to do every stage one and stage two. Might cost $200,000, some amount of money that if there's no appetite from the municipal side, then you shouldn't be preparing design documents for $20 million of projects, right? You would scale that down. So that's why It is useful to engage even in preliminary discussions in terms of their willingness to even consider issuing debt. I would, if you haven't done so already, I would establish a school building committee. Those meetings should be public so that members of the public can come and join. And you would want to reach out to the municipal side to have representation from them, because that will only help secure your approval. So in terms of like roles and responsibilities, right, while you have complete care and control as part of stage 2, when you identify solutions to your needs, you need both school committee approval, but also town council approval. So again, there is some level of approval that the town is responsible for. So engaging them early really increases the likelihood that you'll get something of a larger size. You know, without rehashing too much into the past, you know, we have the stage 2 that just came in. I know we've had conversations with some of you, and it seemed like we were only able to get about $1 million or so across the finish line for the locker rooms. I have something along those lines.
That's not quite accurate, I guess. So we had a $500,000 emergency plan that was approved, and then I think it's 1.4 million, I think, is the
Yeah, 1.3, Dr. Larkin.
1.3 million.
Okay.
So a total of
bathrooms.
1.8 million that was actually money that had already been allocated by the town council. So that was our most recent submission.
Okay. And yes, and then so the 500,000 is done separate. You received that ahead of time already.
Right.
The point here was that there was an opportunity, and there still might be, if we can get our act together within the next week or so, that if you recall some of the discussions, if the town appropriates a certain amount, you're going to do work, you're going to receive some reimbursement. Well, it might be useful to have at least a 2-year approval, because this process can take over a year. So it's quite likely that we'll be having this conversation next March. I'll be a guest at your school committee. You won't have any approvals just because of the nature of this. It can take over a year, and you won't have any approvals for next summer work. So you will likely need to do work in the summer of 23, but you won't have any approvals. So I know that, or I believe, I'll say, I believe that the architects who are on here have already designed many of those projects that we couldn't, and then perhaps this is maybe not the willingness of the school committee, but perhaps of the town, but even I would highly recommend that we find a way to get at least a few more of those projects included in this stage 2, because I can see it now, and I've seen this at the news for 12 years, that we will likely have a conversation in the upcoming months where you're worried about summer of 23 with no state approval. And we have statutory requirements that require you to spend 3% of your operating budget on maintaining your facilities. And there's no better way to do that than having the state help you right through housing aid maintain your own facilities. And if you don't have approvals, you don't get any type of state aid for school construction. So that's a bit of a tangent. We have a really small window. We have 10 applications we received this year. We have not yet reviewed Tiverton's, because we're going in the order of size. But from our discussions from a few weeks ago, I remember speaking to the town administrator that because the work has already been done by RGB, I would find a way, if we can even get another 800,000, even just approved. There's no commitment by anyone to actually even do the work. But I really don't want Tiverton to have to do work next summer and have no approvals and no state aid coming in. So that's, I would like to avoid that if possible, just because I've seen how this plays out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. And Myra, thanks for that overview. But as you know, we've submitted a new stage 1, as you already identified, in February. And then wouldn't that qualify us for summer work in the summer of 23 if we follow up with a stage 2 in September? And to your point, learning a lot of lessons from that first stage 1 is following your presentation tonight. RGB is going to take us through moving from stage 1 to stage 2 and outline multiple meetings with building committee, town council, and the school committee to try to make sure this process is flawless. So if we execute it that way, the summer of 2023 would be covered?
In theory, you can work out. Just again, you have an election coming in November, which could change the composition of both the school committee and the town. So some of the stakeholders will change. I've seen that happen before. If you are looking for something of some significant size for September. 6 months, you may find may not be enough time. It may or may not. I'm saying what you're saying is true, that there is a pathway for you to be covered in the summer of 23, but there are also a lot of pitfalls that you might run into that you may not get to those finish lines for a variety of reasons out of everyone's control that would make it problematic, that there's a chance that you may not have any approvals in 23. And in some ways you can have both, right? We could even bring one of those projects into this stage 2 to cover yourself and buy time. But again, do you have to do that? No, right? Is there a willingness to it? Maybe not. It's just a suggestion that I've seen many times throughout the state, and I don't want to see Tiverton miss out next summer.
No, thank you. Great advice.
Sorry. So actually, I was going to break in with a question. So we, so the process we started last spring, I think, and that's, we did not have the involvement of the town council at that point. So really what you're saying is we should be talking with them about where, not only just the process itself, but what their preferred method of financing anything that we actually do is. And also recognizing at the same time that while it's in some sense a decision that needs to be made, there's also a duty, I guess, on the part of the municipality, certainly over time, to be showing due diligence and maintaining the buildings. That's how I read it. That's how I read the school building authority and sort of the statute. And this is a little bit different also from our most recent 5-year plan was submitted in 2016, and then the process changed a bit in 2018. Is that right?
In terms of like incentives and other funding mechanisms. I mean, in general, the school construction regulations have been around since 2007. But in many ways, some incentives and some other statutory changes have changed it somewhat. I'm
thinking more the process, I think, is what's kind of, I think, been is the changes I've perceived. But anyway, so sorry, go ahead.
One item that this is a good point that you had mentioned is, so yeah, it's not just engaging the town in the process, but also funding. The reason why that matters is because if you are going to go to bond, if that's even a possibility, you need to get General Assembly approval before you even take it to the voters. So historically, you would do a stage 1, a stage 2, then you get General Assembly approval, then you go to voters. Well, the rules have somewhat changed because you have temporary bonuses that are beginning to vanish. So and this is where when I mentioned there's 2 ways to master plan, if you engage the town early and determine that there's a 25 million, I think the last time Tiverton bonded for 25 million, I think that was in 2016. If there's an appetite to go that route, you might want to approach the General Assembly this session, get it approved, and then go to voters in November concurrently with your stage 1 and 2 to give you a pathway to obtain as many bonuses as possible before they begin to expire. Now, again, bonuses are being considered at the moment by the General Assembly. They might be extended, they might be expanded, there might be new ones. We'll know those rules in June, but under the current construct, if you were going to bond, you would need to start that process sooner than later, because your alternative would be to do a stage 2 in September, get approved by a ride in December, and then you're looking at some sort of special election, who knows when, April, May, like there's a cost of special elections and other factors that may not be beneficial, including missing out potentially on 2 of the easiest bonuses to qualify for. So I would engage them early, and if bonding is out of the question, then this is much smoother, because then your ask is going to be much lower, and you don't have to worry about getting General Assembly approval. If a bond is on the table, that might change the approach you take to this.
Can I ask a question? How often are we allowed to submit a stage 1 and 2?
You submit as many as you want. So as long as the trade-off is right, each stage 1 and 2 has a cost because you have to hire a team to submit it. So you usually, ideally, you would do one every 5 years, right? You get a 5-year approval, so you only pay once for a 5-year approval. We have districts who have done 2 approvals over 5 years because priorities changed. Warwick is a good example, where a few years ago, 2020, they came in for $56 million just for their elementary and middle schools because they were working on a high school plan, which they're now putting forward in 2022. So they're going to have 2 open approvals over a 2 or 3 year period. So it's possible. So in Tiverton's case, you likely will finish all that work, I believe, this summer. That 1.8 million will likely be done. So you actually won't have 2 things concurrently because you will complete it, close it, and then open another one, hopefully, if all goes well, by next December. But there's nothing that prevents you from applying each year, but that also defeats the purpose of a 5-year approval. That we would like to see you only, we would like to see you less, but you're welcome. Priorities change and things come. There's nothing that stops you from coming every single year if you really wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
I actually have several questions, Dr. Larkin, but just let me know when it's appropriate to ask them.
I don't know how you want to proceed, Mario. I'm sure we could just.
Questions?
Okay, then Deb, you have the floor.
I think one of the, thank you for coming, first of all. I think one of the confusions, at least that I had is phase 1 submission, phase 2 submission. What constitutes approval? So that, we've gone back and forth a little bit about that. So phase 1, you just require something signed by the chair. Do you require anything from the municipal side? Is it that loose that it's like, well, you just sort of put it in?
Oh, you mean local approvals?
Yeah.
Not state approvals, local.
No,
Yeah,
local approvals.
Local approvals for stage 1, because there's no like state approval at stage 1. It's just like the first step of the stepping stone. The statement of interest requires chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and a municipal representative, whether it's the town manager, whether it's the town council president, the
So
town
in
finance director.
our case where we did not get someone from the municipal side, they weren't comfortable doing so. Do we in effect not have a stage 1?
What'll happen, it's a great question. So normally what happens, applications come in, these documents can be, in Warwick's case, it's 2,000 pages, and some years I would hope would be less than that. They're always missing something. So we will do a supplemental request of information. So at the moment, we also have, which is a record, 18 communities seeking approval in December of 2022, in part because the bonuses begin to expire. So Tiverton is on that list. We're just going in order. So you will likely in the next few weeks, we'll get a supplemental request right off the top of that. The very first one will be where there's no local approval, please provide it. Until you provide it, you can't move forward. So we will need it. Do we need it at this moment? No, but you will get a supplemental request of items that are outstanding. And that is one of them that is required for this to advance to stage 2.
Okay, and so Wright's position is, even from the school committee, that it's the chair and the superintendent alone. You don't need the full board. Or do you assume that if the chair is signing that the full board had already approved, or you don't get into that local depth at all?
Yeah, that's up to you again, because stage 1, you're just identifying need. You're not actually asking for any money. In stage 2, we require the entire school committee and the entire
town council. Perfect.
That's
okay.
correct.
So I had a question. Someone had brought this up to me, and I don't remember if it's still the case or if it's changed, that because we just went through this process and built new schools in 08 and 09, that those are not eligible now for capital improvements. Like if we're gonna, so you just built 3 elementary schools, can we do major changes to those schools even though they're still on bond? Or is that, someone had thought that was a limitation?
Yeah, you can't close them. Like I know, if you were going to close one of them for whatever reason because you wanted to do something, that's different. Then yeah, we would stop payments on that. But if you want to do repairs within it, I mean, those buildings. are
Can
now
we go
50 years.
beyond repairs? Say we want to completely reconfigure the library, say. That's fine.
Yeah, no, I think,
Okay.
I mean, the buildings are 15 years old now. By the time you actually do the work, they'll be closer to 18 or 19. Sure.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, good. So I just wanted to clarify that, because that is something that I had heard. And then, so the phase 2 submission, 50% must be completed within 5 years, but it doesn't have to be, it can be either through bond or through capital. Do we have to identify which one it is?
No, as long as you complete 50% of your approval. So your approval might have both. It doesn't matter how. That's why, going back to your previous stage 2, there was actually no risk in adding just another project, because you actually don't have to do it. So if you just do your 1.4 million, and let's say you get a $700,000 project in there, if you never do it, that's fine. You still did the 50%. So in your case, if you're doing a larger ask that includes both bond and capital, as long as you spend 50% of it, you will be fine.
So Mario, can I just actually clarify that for myself then? My understanding was, yes, we have to complete 50% within 5 years, but we also had to, when we submitted the stage 2, make a determination about how we would approach financing, either through capital expenditures, money appropriated by the town or the citizens, or through bonding. That's not a requirement of the phase 2, stage 2.
Oh, no, it is. And you actually have to show us funding sources for 100% of the projects. But we understand that, again, in many communities, there's financial town meetings, there's other mechanisms where just because a stage 2 is approved, there's no commitment. It's very hard to commit future town councils and future voters, right? So that's why it's in there, that there's some level of flexibility. You have to do half, but when you hand in a stage 2, you need to show us funding for all of it and exactly how it's funded. Now, whether you actually, in some cases, we have communities who, even though they get voter approval, the town doesn't even issue the whole amount. They might only issue half of it, or 60%. We have examples across the state. And again, it's the same concept. As long as you're doing half, then at least from our end, you're complying with our regulations.
And then if we don't do half, then that's where you get into a situation where you start to lose your aid, the house.
Yeah, let's hope we never find out what happens.
But yes, if you
yeah,
submit,
there's clear language that you could be subject to losing housing aid, which
okay,
we do our best to ensure that doesn't happen.
Oh, I'm sure. I just want to.
Well, the other thing too now is that the regulations are from 2007, but we have new maintenance requirements that were put in statute in 2018. So you have to start spending anyways, and in many cases that'll help you meet the 50%. So I don't envision that being a challenge like it was prior to 18, when there was no requirement to spend on facilities. There is now. So.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I think right now, I think there was just a lot of confusion about the approvals, and at least for the next phase, that's going to be the hurdle. Is I heard from you that within the next few weeks, you're going to come back and you're going to ask for that missing municipal piece. So, okay. I think I'm all set, at least for the things that I had written down. Thank you, Dr. Larkin.
Mario, maybe you could detail a little bit about what, not exhaustively, about what goes into what I would call maintenance of effort in terms of the sort of the amount that the town is needed to show they're spending on maintaining the buildings.
Sure. What is Amy on here? What's your operating budget, just roughly?
32 million.
33.
33. Okay. So beginning in FY23, so you have one of 3 options to meet that requirement. So it's either $3 a square foot, subject to inflation, a % of operating budget, or a % of replacement value. Across the board, unless you are a building charter school or Block Island, the lowest one of the 3 is the % of operating budget. So all districts with more than one building go for that one. In your case, it's going to be approaching $1 million a year, $960,000. that you must spend on building maintenance. Now, that doesn't just mean projects, right? You have maintenance workers whose salaries and benefits include. You might have projects that you're doing anyways, but per statute, you have to spend a certain amount of money on your buildings. This was put in place because the state is now giving out bonuses. It's giving out pay-as-you-go funding, capital funds. So the state wants to make sure that the districts then, once they make these investments, will then maintain their buildings moving forward. So you're going to have to spend that. So even as you're planning a 5-year plan, like you can even use that as your floor. So you would want a 5-year, $5 million approval total as the bare minimum that you would come to RIDE, because that at least guarantees that you will meet that 3% requirement.
And
Now,
that's
sure, you
starts
might have-
next year, Mario? FY '23, you said?
It goes up to 3%. This current year, it's 2.5%. And then
Okay.
it rises and stays at 3% beginning in
Okay.
FY '23.
So does that money, so let's say this, when we add up everything that we're doing, we're $1 million short in terms of showing that 3% or whatever, 2.5%. That would mean that we would have to find money either in our budget to allocate then to facilities, or the town would have to appropriate it separate from the school committee's budget or the schools district's budget. And we're also constrained by caps and other things. So I could sort of see the math not working very well there, or not working, but sort of creating essentially a structural deficit in the budget.
Yes, so the other piece that I did mention is that the state law also gives, so if let's say for whatever reason you fall short by 300,000, again, I'm just making numbers up. The state law actually allows RIDE to take housing aid payments that are going to pay the debt service on your new elementary schools. It takes it from the town and gives it an account that only the district can use to maintain their buildings. So there are mechanisms in place where the state will make the municipalities maintain their buildings if they won't maintain them. That happened, it's very painful. Again, we have had one community who did that 2 years ago. They might actually do it again this year. But yeah, it's written right in the statute that if you're not meeting that percentage, we will take it from you.
So then if RIDE did that, then the town would be, because the town holds the bonds, they would
Correct.
they would need to find the funding to service the debt then. And because the money would have been turned over, so assuming they're, let's just assume that they're using the reimbursement from RIDE to service the debt. If we were not maintaining that effort, RIDE took the money that was reimbursement and turn it over to the district, then the town would have to find money to service the debt somewhere else. Okay. That's interesting. Another question that had triggered, and now I'm forgetting what it was. So, and what about the cap and how that plays into it? That just sort of goes into the mix, I assume.
In terms of what, raising property taxes?
No. Yeah. So we can only, by statute, unless we have an override, you can only increase the budget by 4%. And that would, and if state, I just remember my other question. So if you cannot raise enough if you can't increase the budget statutorily enough to accommodate the maintenance of effort for facilities, what happens?
That hasn't come yet. But in some ways, right, this is also prioritizing dollars that exist now. The other, so that's one of the realities. You would have to just make a choice to fix that. The only thing that, and not to sound the alarm, but the $960 that you're paying, you might find that you already meet a significant chunk of that just by salaries and benefits and some projects you're already doing. So I wouldn't, right. and I didn't mean to, to sound some alarm.
Anybody.
Yeah, that you don't have any of it. You likely might already be a certain floor anyways, and then this is really where the state approval comes in, where if you can do work at housing, you use that to maintain your buildings moving forward, then that really, this becomes a non-issue, because this is where that approval is key. If you get a multiple year approval and you get a commitment from the municipality to use some of those resources that you're going to receive from RIDE to help you meet this, you'll never run into that issue.
Right. And I believe we've been submitting those reports and we've always been at the floor, correct, Amy and Peter? I mean, we.
Yes, that's the asset protection plan. Right, Mario?
All right.
Yeah, and I think you've cleared it every year, but again, we have, I think this year we were tracking 8, and I don't think you're on the list, so I'm not gonna scare you, but we had, I think, 8 communities who, if they spent the same they spent last year, would fall short of that. Tiverton was not on the list, but we can see where, where you are. But again, the key is, and you can work with Amy, identify, like you might already have a piece of your budget that already automatically qualifies for that you're spending anyways. So it's not like you need to carve out $1 million out of the air that you weren't planning on spending. But again, this is where if you can get other state aid to arrive to help you meet that, then for sure you have nothing to worry about.
So
If I'm sorry, Dr. Larkin.
So
If I'm doing the math relatively quickly, our maintenance and custodial salaries for maintenance alone covers a decent chunk of it.
Okay.
Not custodial, right?
Next, well, we have some that are sort of custodial and maintenance. We would have to parse out their time, but it would certainly help. In addition to sort of our regular maintenance of like, fixing electrical and plumbing and things like that on a maintenance basis, not a capital basis.
Diane?
I was actually going to ask Amy and or Mario, what type of expenses aside from your custodial or your maintenance salaries would be considered allowable spending toward maintenance for this purpose?
So we have, and I can send it to you. We have a guidance document
We
on our website, which might be useful for everyone to have. I can send it to Amy, and then she can share it with the committee, which outlines what's included. Now, again, we try to be flexible. Like, we don't want to be penalizing districts, so we've done this in the past, that if you, let's say, based on your, about 3/4 through the fiscal year now, that if you do a run and you think you might fall short, immediately call us and we'll go through. There might be categories that you're not counting that comply with statute, or maybe we can get creative and find ways. We've done that very successfully with other districts to get them over that line. Like, we don't want anyone to fall underneath it if we can avoid it.
All right. Thank you.
So if I could ask another question. So if we submitted a 5-year capital plan and there was, $1 million of expenditures and we only spent $990,000, would that jeopardize any reimbursement we were getting from projects from the prior capital plan? Or would it just apply, would the punitive measure, and hopefully we're never going to get there, but would it apply to all potential reimbursement from RIDE, or just sort of potential reimbursement under the capital plan under which we did not complete 50%?
So there's two. So you're saying this is a longer term question. You're saying at the end of year 5, if you fell short?
Mhm.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So this is one where, again, we've never had to do this, so hopefully we won't. We would at that point work with you to find a way, I think the way the regulation is written, you could, I think it says not will, could stop, but we'd stop you from receiving housing aid from a year, but in some ways it's counterintuitive to take away aid that pays for projects and then ask you to do projects. So we would know years in advance. Usually we'll check in with districts as their plans progressing, and we will be proactive. If we see spending is way down, we usually will reach out immediately. And so far in 12 years, that has never occurred, at least when I've been around. We've made sure that no one misses that mark.
Okay. So Mike, do you have any, we're sort of doing questions. I was going to say, Mike, do you have any questions right now?
No, I don't. Thank you.
And Elaine, any questions right now?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. So Mary, I don't know if you want to continue, if you had other stuff that you wanted to tell us or kind of other parts of the process you wanted to review with us.
Yeah, one of the big things and the big driver for many communities has been the advent of these temporary housing aid bonuses, which the first two begin to expire at the end of this calendar year. I suspect we are now in an election year, and many communities are running into both COVID issues, right? There was a year lost for planning on school construction and even doing the work, but also supply chain issues where many communities, East Providence, for example, was quoted 33 weeks recently to receive windows, which is more than half a year. Warwick was quoted 28 weeks to receive their HVAC equipment. So in terms of planning construction, there's been now a push from multiple stakeholders to engage the General Assembly and the governor to begin to extend those bonuses. That would give your plan more flexibility. So one of the pitfalls is if the bonuses are not extended, then, and I would suggest that if the bonuses are not extended, we would meet immediately in June or July to figure out a strategy, because there's a very paper-thin pathway for communities just like Tiverton, who sent in a stage 1 application in February and intend to do a stage 2 in September and then a ride approval in December. There's a razor-thin margin of error where you could concurrently engage a construction manager, perhaps sign that person right before the deadline, just shortly after the ride approval, and we can go into those details if we get there. But what that would do is that would help you preserve at least 2 of the easier bonuses to get, which are health and safety and educational enhancements. That would guarantee you 10% on top of your 35% for your projects. And then we can work with you to see if we can find other bonuses for Tiverton to get you to 50 and up to 52.5% is the maximum. But yeah, and this is one, like, so we'll have more information in the next 3 months. If the bonuses are extended, then you have more time, right? So maybe you might find that handing your stage 2 in September may not work, but maybe next February works. And if the bonuses are extended, then you have ample time to work with the town and engage the community and find the best solution. But what the main reason that we have 18 communities just like Tiverton looking to get approval this December is because the bonuses are set to expire at the end of this year. So we can, again, if they're not extended, we can meet, and have a very detailed meeting and map out a pathway for you this summer of how to react. But my feeling is that there's enough support from others to do so. You may consider, so many school committees and town councils across the state are writing resolutions to their representatives and senators to support extending the bonuses. So if Tiverton has not done that, that may not be a bad move to do. I can send you language that others have done. Lincoln did that already a few months ago. So that would be a suggestion for you, because it really will benefit your projects, especially from a financial perspective. The town, they are more likely to give you more if the state is going to pay more. That's just across the board. It's usually a true statement. And it would help your case to ask for, if you were going to ask for a bond, it's easier to ask for a bond at 50% reimbursement or even 52% reimbursement than it is at 35%. That's just how it's been. So I would just keep an eye on that. Again, we can't control what the General Assembly does or does not do. So we'll have more information then. The governor's budget includes another $250 million bond. So this application would receive some level of pay-go. The exact formula will be finalized again over the next 3 months. So we'll know at that point what Tiverton would get in terms of pay-as-you-go funding. But yeah, the big takeaway is I would engage the town early, both in process and in funding, understand the parameters of what you do. So again, if they give you very tight parameters and say it's going to be very challenging to do 50 million, for example, don't spend your time designing 50 million, right? Design within the realm of what will get approved, because again, this is where you need both approvals. And the reality is that any amount of projects that are approved is a good amount, because the alternative is zero in many cases. So yeah, those are the big takeaways. Usually, once we approve your stage one, we will do a formal meeting with your school building committee and tour your schools. I think we did this back in October at some point, so we would be doing it again perhaps this summer with Tiverton, and you know, maybe it might be beneficial. Maybe that's could be scheduled in July, so we'll have those answers from the General Assembly, and it could be a very detailed conversation to map out a timeline for Tiverton. But of course, if we hear information before then, you know, we can certainly reach out and give you that insight of whether they will be extended, or there's talk of even expanding bonuses, perhaps even raising the amount of bonuses you could get. So I think it's a good time, but again, engage the town early, include in the school building committee, and find out what their willingness to pay. Otherwise, you know, we don't want a repeat of what just happened.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Feel free to just unmute and chime in. Any questions from any of our administrators? See our student reps on. And any questions from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Luckett.
Okay. So Mario, thank you very much. I think, you know, we still need to talk with the town council a lot. I don't know if they've reached out to you. I think they were sort of trying to understand the process as well. And in particular, their role in it. Obviously, it's, you know, they have a big role in terms of the finances of the town, stuff like that. Have they had an opportunity to talk with you yet?
Now, I spoke with the town administrator, might have been right before the 15th, the February 15th submission, to see if he could get the town to perhaps include another 700,000 or so in that application. But it sounds like that he wasn't able to do that. So that was the last I had heard of him. So I haven't spoken to the town, you know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Right. Diane, were you raising your hand or just?
I just have one more question. I apologize. I thought I was done. Stage one application. What does that commit anyone to? Does that commit anyone in this town to move forward with bonding, construction, anything?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great.
Although, to Mario's point, stage one spends money because now you have your architects doing things to get ready for stage two. So it does commit funding.
Well, but when you look at it prospectively, it's the question that, you know, if you already have a stage one completed, what does that mean with regard to commitment from the town? And if the answer is nothing, that was what I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay.
I think, but just to reiterate, we don't have an approval from the town for stage one. You're going to be looking for it in 2 weeks. If you don't get it, then our stage one will be basically invalid. I don't know a better word.
Frozen. Let's say it's frozen.
Frozen. Okay, thank you.
Rather than valid, because you know you did hit the deadline. We usually will give you time to provide whatever information is necessary, but without it, like, so the real deadline is I mean, yeah, let's hope that it doesn't get there, but yeah, it just can't move without it. It's just frozen, and then at some point, you withdraw it.
So I guess I have another question then, which is, you know, I'm not speaking for them clearly, but I think what I might envision hearing from the town council is, you know, we don't want to proceed with submitting a stage two in September because we haven't had the opportunity to really consider this, and a lot sort of happened prior to really engaging with them. What's the answer to that? And we would feel more comfortable doing a stage 2 application in February 2023, when we might be able to couple other things in terms of town financing, other projects. What would be the answer to that?
Yeah, you can do that. I mean, again, this is where there's a trade-off. So if the bone, and again, this is where the money also drives the decision. So if bonuses are available, it's more difficult. If bonuses expire at the end of December, it's more difficult to argue to go past that date to have an approval, because you're going to miss out on potentially millions of state dollars. But if they are extended, I would suspect the scenario you played out to be at what actually happens. And furthermore, when I started with this, I actually suspect that it might even be past that, just the way it works out. And again, no fault of anyone. These processes include a lot of stakeholders. They include buy-in from the town. You have an election in November, which may change things, right, for February. So I would bank on, honestly, I would suspect that if the bonuses are extended, and even if they're not, that you would likely target a February of 2023 submittal to get your buy-in, get your stakeholders, and get everything aligned. Now, maybe you guys can engage them early and move really quickly and change the narrative and target September. But in terms of processes, let's assume you get that signature for that document that we need, and that we approve your stage 1. Let's assume that for the moment. You have, by regulation, 1 year from the date of your stage 1 approval to hand in a stage 2. So that actually gives you 2 entry points, September 15th and February 15th of 2023. So you can actually hit either without any paperwork or fanfare. But again, the big driver for many communities has been the availability of bonuses, which changes the course of schedules, because they want to lock in as many state dollars as possible.
And there would be no particular reason why we couldn't submit a more modest, similarly modest, I should say, similarly modest stage 2 this September. And then if there were bigger aspirations in September, or just bigger aspirations in February 2023, that would be another way of going at it too. Because you can submit as many stage 1s as there are Februarys and Septembers, or stage 2s as there are Februarys and Septembers.
You could, but again, this is where that would be tougher, because again, there's a cost to each one. Right? RGB is not free, but this is where you would avoid, the scenario you played out. If we could somehow, within the next week, convince the town to, even pick a few of the projects that have already been designed, already been paid for stage 2, put them in your stage 2 now, that actually bypasses the scenario you played out, where you would actually be covered for perhaps 2 years. You'd have a very modest, you have your 1.8 million that you're doing now, and then you would cover yourself for the summer of 23 and actually allow a larger process to play out. That I agree, and I think that if you can get your act together, I don't know if that's the best word, I apologize if that comes out as wrong, but if you could find a way to include even a few more projects that have already been designed and already been paid for, which is the frustrating part, and get them in this existing stage 2, I think you would save yourselves a lot of headaches in the future.
So Mario, just to be clear, so you're talking about amending the stage 2 that we just submitted in February, essentially?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we are allowed, okay.
But what kind of projects would we have already paid for that we could add? I wasn't aware that we
Paid for.
What's that?
We paid for the design. We haven't paid for the projects themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
I believe that's what he's
You haven't paid
speaking
for,
of.
like,
We've paid for the design.
Thank you.
that's correct. So usually, if you hadn't done the work, I wouldn't even suggest it, because it takes time to actually do schematic designs and cost estimates. But that's already been done. RGB did that work,
Yep.
and that's not moving forward. So in some ways, it's crazy to not grab something and put it in and save yourselves the headaches that are going to come when I suspect you will not be in September, just because I've seen this many times. That you will. It'd be nice to have at least another summer of a modest approval as a safety net while you engage the town on a larger ask. And again, the work has already been done, already been paid for.
And that's where you were saying that, okay, you're going to spend 1.4 million. So you have to spend 50% of that, just say 2. Or just,
Yes, for
right.
example, something like that, so that there's actually literally there's no commitment to actually even do the work.
But just to
It's just a-
clarify what I think you just said, so we can actually add things to the current stage 2 that we just submitted on February 15th, 2022?
I'm saying yes, that if within the next week, we haven't reviewed yours yet, and I know you did the work, and we're trying
Yeah.
to work with both the town and the district here.
But we
Yep.
need the
Stage
council
2's
approval as well, Mario.
Yeah, we're not gonna get.
Yeah, so exactly. So you have to get your local approvals, but if you can do that really quickly, we want to help. We don't want to,
Yeah.
we want to support. So
Thank you, Mario.
Yeah, so we just wanted to clarify that that would again have to go before the town council, because we did have letters and amounts associated with that application.
Right. No, I understand that. I got it. Anything else, Mario, or anyone else? All right.
try, if you could find a way, I would try to get a few more in there because you already paid for it.
Yeah. I'll remain optimistic, but not expectant.
You're actually on the school committee in Lincoln, so you get it, right?
No, I understand.
There's
but-
the reality and there's the practicality and of
All right.
the
No, I get it.
situation.
So
Thank you, though.
um,
This was a great presentation.
That's why I leave my discussions in Lincoln talking about bonuses. That's what
Yeah.
they want to hear about. So, no, yeah, no, I get it. So if you can try it. There's a door here, a very narrow door. We'll work with you. We want to support, not obstruct. But yeah, then the reality is, to Dr. Larkin's point, I wouldn't necessarily at that point do, a small stage 2 in September, like at that, because you're not going to do the work in the middle of the school year, that you could just wait till February of 23 and do it all at once, because you wouldn't start construction in January. So I think that we can hopefully avoid that. And again, yeah, I would immediately engage the town soon, early, it takes a long time. In many cases, it could take years to actually get everyone aligned and on board with this.
okay. All right, thank you. So feel free, please actually stay for C and B, because I think that might help us as other questions come up. But so we're going to move to item 7C now. Review calendar and communication plan to achieve stage 2 submittal. Dr. Sanquioni.
Great, thanks, Dr. Larkin. And we have RGB here today. So we're predicating this thought process on the stage 1 that's already been submitted, recognizing it doesn't have a signature that's required, hopeful that we can obtain it. But we want to make sure that the process is clearly outlined to the school committee so that we could achieve potentially projects being submitted in September. As you know, the schools have some significant needs, and if there's revenue coming back to the town on the first reimbursements for these projects that are in, and that reimbursement should or could flow to the schools, we may have available revenue. And to the point Mario made earlier, if you're going to have the revenue, we want to take advantage of these potential reimbursements. So RGB's outlined the plan. It's a pleasure to have them here. I can see Tracy, I can see Dave, so I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Yeah, thank you for having us tonight. And if we could share screen, that'd be appreciated.
Feel free.
Okay. You all see that? Okay. So anyone that doesn't know, Dave DeQuattro from RGB and myself, Tracy Donnelly from RGB, and we'll just run through this. This is a flow chart of the RIDE process, everything that Mario pretty much just went through, the different stages of the necessity of school construction application, starting with the stage 1, which identifies need, stage 2, which develops the solution. From there, you get the approved application, and then stage 3 is the design review process through RIDE, and stage 4 is actual construction. So Tiverton right now has multiple phases. I'll just jump to that. You have the stage 2 application that was submitted February 15th, 2022, for the renovations for the high school toilet rooms and the light poles for the athletic fields, for work that is slated to be done this summer. But that application would be valid through June 30th of 2027. A new stage 1 submittal went in also February 15th, 2022. That was the identification of need and also starting of a second necessity school construction application that we were talking about, the stage 2 being submitted September 15th, 2022 or February 15th of 2023. And that would be your next 5-year capital improvement plan that would carry you through June 30th, 2027 as well. And then there's this is just showing what went into the emergency request for the bathrooms in blue for the middle school that are being done now. That has gone through the stage 3 review process with RIDE and heading towards stage 4, the construction, once that gets awarded and starting to get implemented. And then what went into the new stage 2 application, the purple is the potential restroom renovations at the high school. Educational visioning, just to touch base again, that was done. Our ed planner has had workshop sessions, and we will have a update to both the school building committee, the school committee, and the town council as to what was came out of those sessions. The RIDE maintenance expenditure, I got this from RIDE's website, Mario, so I know this was based on the $3.44 per square foot. We can work with RIDE to see if, based on that operating budget, it's a different amount. But again, this was just what I had found on posted on RIDE.
That's per year, Tracy?
Yes.
So roughly 1.4 million.
Yes.
But I think that would, for us, it would revert to the 3% of the operating budget, not the footage.
Right. I think that at the time when that was posted, RIDE did not have Tiverton's operating budget, so it was just based on the $3.44 a square foot. Certainly that will change based on the operating budget. And then again, the $500,000 for the emergency request would apply to that, and there's other expenditures that would apply to that as well. The so how we get from the stage 1 to the next stage 2 application, this is just a milestone schedule, so everyone will know of some of the tasks or deadlines that need to occur, and then this is just a schedule outlining how we get there. This was assuming the stage 2 application was submitted in September, so September 15th of 2022. Starting with the educational vision, at the last school building committee, we had outlined the March, April, and May building committee meetings, but I think to meet this schedule and submit the stage 2 for the September, I had gone back and put in bi-weekly meetings. That would have to be discussed with the building committee, but for now they're placeholders. So starting with a discussion on the educational vision, what was found during that educational planning process, and how that drives the whole plan going forward would be a discussion on March 22nd, a discussion on school utilization and the impacts of that would occur April 12th. That meeting has been already scheduled for the school building committee. Discussions on cost funding occurring on 4/26, and then updates and presentations to the school committee and town council either on that same date, if it's a joint meeting for the school committee, or if it's a separate town council meeting, we could look at when that would be scheduled. And there, once the budget and the funding source have been determined, development of the capital improvement plan and what projects actually would then go into that next application, occurring in May, probably 2 separate meetings to discuss that. And then once those projects have been determined, again, an update to the school committee and the town council, and actually getting authorization from the school committee to then turn those items that are identified on the 5-year capital plan going into that schematic design level. And that's where we would actually do drawings, professional cost estimates, that type of thing. That would occur June into July. Once we finish those drawings, go to the cost estimator, he needs about a month to turn that around. And then coming back to the school committee and town council with the final stage 2 drawings, the cost that we get back from the cost estimator, and getting approval to submit for that 9/15 deadline. So obviously, if that is changed to be February 15th of 2023, this schedule could elongate for that. That's it, actually, this, oops. That's it. So I don't know if there was any questions on some of the milestone tasks and schedule to get there.
Okay, thanks, Dave and Tracy. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions from the committee. Mrs. Farnworth.
Looking at this milestone schedule and, you know, regardless of where we end up landing, I think you need to build in some opportunity for the elected officials to challenge your plans and bring them back to the school building committee before asking for approval at any stage. I do not want to be a school committee member who has the first view into any part of this the first time the night I'm being asked to vote for approval. I want the opportunity to have the full-fledged discussion, challenge specific items, come to, you know, take votes at the school committee and or the town council level, and send it back for rework. It's just a natural part of a project, and I don't think that that's being accommodated here and would need to be.
That's fine, we could do that. I think that is built in, so that development of the capital improvement plan, and then having to have the school committee and town council authorize us to proceed in schematic design is kind of one of those checks. If you didn't like what was on the capital improvement plan, or if you didn't like the amount of the capital improvement plan, then we would go back to that development of the capital improvement plan stage. But we can work in other approval processes. That's fine.
And perhaps more specificity then on the milestones, so people understand exactly what the actions would be needed at specific times.
Okay.
Scope is looking at the toilet renovations right now, right?
Well, we don't know what's in the stage 2, the next stage 2. Okay.
Yeah, I agree, Diane. Those are 2 very good points. Both, you know, in terms of, you know, an opportunity to kind of reflect back to the school building committee what both the town council and the school committee think, and then also what the you know, what the targets we're trying to hit at each of those meetings with each of the bodies in terms of, I think, yeah, I would even say build in kind of a preliminary approval discussion and then an approval discussion on, you know, have those as hard dates so that we aren't scrambling again.
Yeah, that was the intent. Maybe it wasn't understood, but that's what like this 426 meeting would be. There would be school committee meetings and updates and discussion that would then maybe change, you know, something. We would go back and modify that, and we wouldn't move to the next step till we did receive those approvals. So that's what is built into some of these stages.
Okay. Yeah, I think spelling that out in any kind of presentation that we give to the town council, or that as we kind of go through this process, you know, knowing what the dates are. certainly was part of our problem last time around. Ms. Pavo?
I have no questions.
Mr. Dakotas?
No, Diane actually hit the ones. Thanks, Diane.
Okay, and Ms. Polish?
No questions, but I will make a comment. And I realize I may be in the minority, but I do feel that this is entirely too aggressive to get all the taxpayer, voter, council, school committee, building committee buy-in. I just think it's going to be too aggressive, but I thank you for the presentation.
Too aggressive to hit September 15th or, yeah. Yeah, when we look back at the most recent renovation of the high school, the first facility study was in 2013. We didn't start work until, 2013. I think we started the work in 2015 or 16. So yeah, it may be. But again, I think the issue is, what reimbursement is out there that we may be foregoing. Although it's also, it's very popular. So hopefully the legislature hears that as well, and we'll continue it until we're all gone. You know what I mean? So, all right, any questions from the public, Ms. Delcourt, on this item?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
And any other questions or comments from our administrators? Dr. Sanchioni, anything else?
No, I look. Was that Mario?
Just a suggestion that, if you allow.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate the timeline, Tracy. Perhaps, if possible, I would try to move up that finance meeting, because in some ways, this might be the schedule that we followed last time. And if you don't engage the town early and find out your number, in some ways, any meetings before that financing meeting might be fruitless in some ways. So, for example, utilization talk only has merit if you're going to build an addition or close a school, but if there's no budget to support that, then we wouldn't even have a discussion on utilization, because there's no money to support even anything. So I would just offer that I would try to move that up earlier, if as early as possible, get the parameters from the town, start engaging them. In addition to all the other comments that have been said today, I would strongly advise that, because again, if there's no appetite, why are you going to review in-depth utilization that is not going to go anywhere? There's just a thought.
Okay, thank you. No, you're the smartest one in the room, I think, on this. So, well, other than Dave and Tracy. All right. So, any other questions or comments from anyone in the committee or from the administrators, or any other thoughts, Dr. Sanchioni?
Yep, Dr. Larkin, I just would remind the committee too that, you have these projects that are in now that are approved, both the emergency one and the stage 2 that's there, and there's a reimbursement coming back on those. And that reimbursement between the two projects is probably close to $800,000. So, and to Mario's point, RGB has already done the work on several potential projects for the school committees. We paid for the work to be done already. So again, work that's been done and paid for, potential revenue coming in. Again, if the school committee even wanted to identify a couple projects to submit for September, we know what those projects are, and I think they would be successful. You get the biggest bang for your buck, and you may even have the revenue to do them. So although it may seem aggressive, it's a timeline we didn't implement last time, and I think if we had all those meetings, you could be successful.
Okay. And I don't see Emma, but I see Mr. Farley. Any thoughts from our student representative?
No, not at this moment. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So thanks, Dave, and thanks, Tracy. So then I'm going to move to item 7B, which I think is follows from our last two discussions, which is discussion of the new stage 1 application of the school building authority. And so as I mentioned, I think last time, and sort of we alluded to in some of the prior discussion, we did submit the stage 1 letter. I signed it, Peter signed it. We haven't gotten anything from the town yet. And I guess the question I have for the committee, because this was actually my agenda item, is, how do we want to proceed now with everything we've heard tonight and sort of discussed over the last several months, I should say, as we look at our decaying buildings. So I'll open that up. I don't think we need a motion necessarily, unless somebody wants to make one. I'll open it up to discussion to the rest of the committee. Mr. Dakotas, you want to go first?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Sure. I think in the conversations and interactions that we have seen, and I'll try to be gentle with this, and the responses from members of the town council, I don't see it likely that we're going to get that signature. I don't think they have the appetite. I don't think they, at the moment, have any appetite to participate. With that said, if we wanted to consider adding to the stage 2 and making our case to the town council to add on to that stage 2 as quickly as possible, I think we would have that ability. And I think we could quickly come to consensus on what we want to propose. And personally, I think we should delay any new stage 1 application if we don't get that signature until after the election.
Well, the next stage 1 would be due September 15th if we were going to do that. So,
Or February 15th of next year, doesn't matter.
well, then you're talking, okay, but then you're talking even further down no, because we would have to submit a stage 1 letter by September 15th.
No, we could also do it on February 15th for a stage 2 in September of 2023, if that's the way we wanted to go about it, but we'd have plenty of lead time. And
that would give you plenty of lead time.
In either case, we would know by then if the bonuses are going to be extended. Right? It won't matter with regard to the bonuses. We will know one way or another by then. The only drawback is if we were to proceed with a quote unquote big project, which I think all of us knows is needed. And we all want what's best for the schools and bringing the district forward. If we were to proceed that way and decide to advocate for bonding, interest rates are going up. That's the other thing. That's working against us. So, that's just my 2 cents, my opinion.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to call on Amy, Ms. Roderick.
And I guess just as a quick reminder, or a gentle reminder, that even if we did wait until February for the stage 1, and then with bonding and so on and so forth, our applications are not applicable retroactively, I don't believe. So in terms of that, if there are projects that the committee and Dr. Sanquioni feel are urgent, it may be worth our while to do a stage 1 application for those urgent projects and then worry about the larger projects at a later time.
I think that's what I was kind of saying, right? We could have the capacity to add to the phase 2 that's currently out there.
Or even potentially submitting
another emergency.
Not necessarily emergency, but seeing if we can. I know you said that the town council doesn't have an appetite, or you don't believe it does, for the stage 1, but if we could make a case that, if we put it in, that still gives us a year to enter a stage 2 related to that. And I think it would be in our best interest to be as proactive as possible in getting, I don't want to say as many applications in as possible, but the best possible application or applications in as soon as possible. I think it would be to the benefit of the district, for certain.
Mrs. Pavo, and if you're all set.
I'm
Diane.
all set. I'm all set.
All right. And Ms. Balish?
I guess not pointing fingers or pointing fingers. The last process was didn't go well, was painful. I think there's lots of apprehension because of it. I really, until we get buy-in, whether it's this stage 1 for this September or for February, I think until we have buy-in from our council, I don't really, we can't move forward. So.
Yeah. Every step of this sort of then, sets a new timeline or resets the clock. Or every time we kind of submit a stage 1, it kind of sets the clock for when the stage 2 is done, and when the approval occurs, and then when the actual work is accomplished. And the moving targets are, is there still funding available for reimbursement? What is our bond rating? What are the interest rates? Sort of all those things. What's going on in the schools? What is our ongoing maintenance of effort, for want of a better word? And yeah, I agree. I certainly have gotten a sense from our prior discussions with the town council that they have some reluctance to be very aggressive in terms of the timeline right now.
And I think, to Mario's point, I think, going back and amending would have been my preference, but I just think, given the issues and the pressure and the just sort of problems that we had, I'd like to think that that would be possible, but I really, to use Diane's I guess words, I don't think there's an appetite for it, just because of the problems we had. But I agree that with Mario that would have been the best case.
Yep. So any other questions or comments from the school committee? Any questions or comments from our administrators? Mr. Farley, any thoughts?
No, I don't believe.
Okay. And any questions or comments from the public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. So I guess my feeling is, we've certainly gone through the process over the last several weeks and learned a lot. I guess that's always a positive thing to say in the setting of sitting on a school committee. I think, we certainly have certain types of feelings about what we think is the appetite or the kind of concerns of the town council. But I think we should also probably at least try to let them tell us more formally what they think. So I would like to entertain a motion, if someone will make it, that we ask to go before them, either all of us or any one who wants to represent us, to begin this discussion. Mario pointed out one of the most important things is to try and figure out what is the funding mechanism and whether or not that's tied to other things that the town would want to do and what the timeline is. So if someone would like to make a motion that we ask to go before the town council at, some meeting soon to discuss this.
So let's discuss what? I guess I'm not, what specifically?
Discuss this process and whether or not they want to, enter into the discussion actually in a way,
So whether they want to amend the prior one or whether they want to approve the stage one?
Or even how they want to proceed in general
Okay,
with this process. The process has to happen. I think that's, if there's one thing that is fixed, I think it is that the process has to happen. It may be that they're going to say, we want to wait till 2024, which, could be an entirely different council, clearly. Or, we think this is great. We're going to approve $15 million for the school at this meeting. I don't see that happening either. But, sort of as absurdist extremes on the spectrum. But at least I think the process should occur. And I'd like to hear from them what their preferences are in terms of how we proceed. Do we put it to the school building committee to discuss funding mechanisms? Do we form an ad hoc committee of members of all three elected bodies and maybe the administrator and the superintendent and the treasurer even, I don't know, to sort of discuss what is the, financing that might be available to the town or that would seem to work out best for the town.
I might suggest that one step probably even before that, and I can't speak for them, is it was very helpful to hear from the RIDE representative this evening, very knowledgeable, very helpful.
Yeah.
That I would think even before that, they're going to want to hear from him or his, whoever he can send, because I just think that was very helpful. They can ask all their questions, understand the process, understand their role, understand our role. And then to your point, Dr. Larkin, then we have to start getting together with them, whether it's the budget committee or us, or not the budget committee, the building committee or us, or, but I wonder if, we can't set up a meeting for them. We can't, but I would think that, they would find having RIDE explain the process to them in person very helpful.
That very well may be their answer, or they may say, come before us and bring Mario, or we just want to talk to Mario alone in a quiet room without you people. I don't know what they're going to say. But I think we as I guess what I'm saying is that we as a committee need to decide that we want to try and go to them to engage them, if you will. So I'll ask for a motion that we ask to be on their agenda. If someone would like to make the motion.
Dr. Larkin, I will not make that motion unless someone else will.
Okay.
But I would like to suggest as an alternative, instead of going before them, that we have a joint meeting on equal footing to have a robust discussion over what the needs are and what the town's concerns are. That both bodies get together and have a frank discussion over this instead of being a few of us, quote unquote, in front of them. I think as we are major stakeholders, as are they, and that we need to work together or none of it's going to work. And that's as
okay. That's we could go before. Yeah, we could certainly do what I'm suggesting, but do it as an entire body.
I would prefer it be held in the school library so that we can all look at each other and not all, five of us sitting at a table scrunched together in front of them.
Well, the virtual meetings expire the 19th, as far as I understand. So
that's why I suggested the school library. More space. That's why I suggested the school library has more space.
Okay. So is any other? We don't need.
Can I ask Mario if it would be possible for him to reach out to perhaps the council president and see if they would like a presentation like you gave us this evening? I want to make sure that when we all get together, that the questions aren't, well, I know Ride said this, but we have a question about that, so that they're able to ask all their questions about the process. I don't want to speak for you, but is that possible? Is that something you could do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who that is. I do know the town administrator, and maybe he can set it up. If you give me the name, I'm happy to reach out as well. We meet with towns all the time.
President DiMazeros is the current
Okay.
president. Yeah.
It's not an unusual ask. One thing, since I have it now.
I just want to make sure everybody understands the process, because if we start meeting and there's still questions because they haven't met with you, we're going to be right back to where we were, that people don't
I agree.
understand the process.
I'm for it. I
Great.
met with Newport, like Milltown, the town side, not even the district side in the last 2 weeks. So it's very common. One thing that has been very helpful, and I didn't mention this earlier, is you should, as a committee, what is the central feature of your ask? So usually when you approach a town with an ambiguous ask of a medley of health and safety projects, you usually will get more questions than you will get support. But if you say, hey, we are going to redo the auditorium as the main feature, or we're going to do the science labs, or we're going to do the sad thing is sports cell, right? We're going to do the football field, and you put a bunch of other stuff to ride with it, you will see that the likelihood of their support will increase exponentially if you can contextualize what is it that you want. If you approach them with this, like, a bunch of little things, don't waste your time.
Well, so we're not there yet. I mean, we don't even know what we want yet.
Well, I think that's precisely the problem. Was we had a bunch of things that we brought to them, and they said, wait a minute, what are you talking about? No, 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 no. So, I think that's exactly what just happened. So.
But so, and I think I saw a draft version of that plan. There wasn't necessarily a clear, like, what was the center feature of that $20 million plan? Was there one? It seemed like a medley of just you're just throwing things to them. And you have needs. I'm not denying that they're not legitimate needs, but I know, again, for many of these, you go across the board. So again, I'll use the Lincoln examples, right? I've lived these examples. The current stage 2, and actually RGB is working on it, right? So you have physical education center is the centerpiece with elementary school improvements. It's a very simple message. Support was unanimous by our town council. The previous one for Lincoln was $60 million high school renovation with some work at the elementary schools. Unanimous, like, so again, and we have examples across the state. So if work at the high school in an auditorium or sports or something would help sell your ask, that's just advice that I'm offering. You don't have to do it.
Good idea.
I've seen that be very successful.
So, and I guess yes, I see the wisdom in that. The issue, I think, is that we still don't even know how the council wants to engage in the process. So, and maybe, there's no reason why we can't do both. We can't have a joint meeting and sort of say, and certainly would be better for Mario to talk with them first so that they have a better understanding of what the process is. Because I think that's, a lot of it was new information to them, so they can't be faulted for being kind of a little bit reluctant in that regard. But it's not, I think what we need, one of the things we need to establish is not just, having something packaged for them feels like it's way late in the process where we should be having them engaged very early in the process. So I guess what I would advocate for is that we ask them to have a joint meeting, and also ask Mario to reach out to them, or ask, like, we can try and contact Denise or Chris or Mike or whoever to contact him to set up a meeting that's mutually convenient to do both. Any thoughts from anyone else about that?
I mean, I'm
So-
pretty sure I heard the town council president indicate she wanted to meet with RIDE separately. So, let's, if they need any kind of facilitation to help that happen, then certainly, if we can get Dr. Larkin, you and Mario to, try to get on their radar for that purpose, that's great. And then perhaps agree to a joint meeting afterwards. Or even concurrently if you felt it would make sense.
I can tell you what I made sense. I guess I'm not getting much positive feedback. What makes sense to me is that we either go before them or we have a joint meeting with them to try and discuss with them what is their preference in terms of this process. I also think it would be important and helpful to have them meet separately with Mr. Carino, or if they want us present when they meet, that's also fine too. What does the committee want to do?
Chair, I'll make a motion to offer up a joint meeting with the town council, with the school committee to discuss.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any further discussion? So I'll ask for a roll call vote that we request a joint meeting with the town council. Mrs. Polish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas.
Yes.
I don't know if it's internet's slowing down or not. Mrs. Pava,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so that passes. I will try and contact Mrs. DiMederos or Mr. Burke to set up a joint meeting. And then I will at the same time ask them how they would prefer to meet with Mr. Carino, whether that be separately or if they need the contact information, or I can share theirs with him. So any other thoughts about that item? Otherwise, we will move on to the next, which is item 7D, portrait of a graduate. Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Before RGB and Mario go, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Your information was very helpful for the committee, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Jewel, I'm going to need to share my screen. Good. All right. All right. So we've shared this a little bit with the school committee, and I know you can see this. And so we'll talk a little bit about education right now, which is sometimes we get sidelined from the important work. And this is something that's really going to be able to move our school system forward. So you see that picture to the left there, that's Tiverton High School when it opened a long time ago. And a lot of the things in that school are exactly the same today as it was when it opened, what is it, 60, 70 years ago? And so we'd like to change at least some of the thinking around that. And hopefully we'll get around to changing some of the insides of it if we get some projects approved in the future. But this is talking about what goes inside the educational part of it. And with portrait of a graduate, high schools, school communities across the country have been doing this for a number of years, and it's time for Tiverton to be part of this. It's actually been a requirement in our NEAS report that we're going to be presenting to you, I believe, at our next meeting. But to summarize this and put it in a really tight box, this quote really puts it in place. Now more than ever, we must create a school system that not only provides for the acquisition of rigorous academic content. So what do we mean there? Academic content means we teach reading, math, social studies, science, all the courses at the middle school, all the courses at the high school. We're doing an exceptional job with that. We have new curriculums. We have very talented teachers. We're succeeding there. But here's the key. It also must be more intentional about fostering key skills like potentially critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity. These 21st century skills and habits of mind are essential tools for our students that our students need to navigate and thrive in this rapidly changing complex world as they enter into post-secondary education. We want to define what those key skills are. And to define that, we want to involve everyone in this community so that this is truly a portrait of a graduate for a Tiverton student. And so who are we asking? Well, at this point, and we're going to show you the process momentarily, every one of our staff members has given us feedback on what those skills and competencies should be. Every one of our students has given us feedback on what these skills and competencies could be. So that's a lot of responses already. Tonight, we're going to ask the school committee to engage with us as a way of showing our entire community how to do this. Tomorrow morning, we're going to put this out to all of our families, and we're going to ask every parent in the community to give us their feedback. So when we show you the process, you'll see your feedback goes right into a system that's collating all the data for us. At the same time, we're going to reach out to other town committees, other town leaders, communities of faith, business leaders, some local colleges, higher education, and get their feedback too, so that we truly can define what these competencies are. Now, for example, I'm going to skip over that one there. Well, this is showing you down the bottom here, multiple school systems across the country who've already created a portrait of a graduate, and you can see their unique designs and so forth. I want to show you this here. This is an example. This is not Tiverton's portrait of a graduate. This was created basically just to show what potentially it would look like. That if people thought critical thinking was one of the top 5 competencies that we wanted all students to leave our district with. What this means then, or collaboration, you can pick either one of these, there are examples, that the work then begins for us as educators to look at ways to embed these competencies in a kindergarten classroom all the way up to an AP chemistry classroom, so that truly a student has an experience with these 5 competencies, whatever this community decides on, throughout their entire education in Tiverton, so that when they truly leave here, they will be well vested in these things and be well prepared to take them with them in their post-secondary education or wherever they're leaving after graduation. So it's critical. It's critical. It's a need now. It's not a want to do. It's a have to do. And so to do this, it's real simple. It's this little website here that you click on, and now Dr. Larkin has actually volunteered to do this live on air, so that all the parents watching at home can see how it's done. The school committee, you're welcome to do it along if you have your computer with you. But we're going to open this up tomorrow for the entire community and hopefully gain a lot of feedback. So I'm going to stop my share there. I've given you the background. I want to answer any questions about that, and before I let Dr. Larkin go forward. All right, pretty straightforward, right? We're going to decide on these competencies we want every graduate to have when they get done with the 12 years of education in our school system. So it's important that everyone has a thing there. I see Ms. Delcourt's put the link in the chat. So if you're at home right now and want to follow along, feel free. If you're a committee member and you want to do this live, feel free. But I'm going to turn it to Julie and Dr. Larkin right now to go through it.
So before Dr. Larkin shares his screen, I just want to allow the friends at home to use the QR code that's on their screen. So they can take out their smartphone and aim it towards the QR code directly on your screen and use the camera feature. The camera feature will allow you to pull up that website immediately. And then most importantly, the group code that everyone in Tiverton is going to use is Portrait Tiverton. Portrait is capitalized and Tiverton is capitalized.
Okay, so we're going to pull up Dr. Larkin's screen, Ms. Delcourt?
Yes, so Dr. Larkin, go ahead and share your screen and we'll watch you work.
Well, I don't really know what I'm doing. So graduated, volunteer was a little bit generous here.
So we'll talk you through it then.
So you can see my screen, correct?
Yes,
correct. You can see your screen. So you're going to scroll all the way up to the top.
Yep. And
I would love for you to choose My Sketch. Upper right-hand corner in green and white lettering.
That's
My
where,
Sketch.
yeah, that's where Zoom is. Okay, My Sketch.
There you go.
All right.
All right, someone has to mute themselves.
Actually, am I the host now? Maybe I need to mute them. Anyway, so I need to create an account, huh?
You do, if you haven't done this yet.
I have not.
All right, so there you go.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll just use that.
I have a group code,
I have a group code.
and it's Portrait Tiverton, capital P, capital T.
Well, people should be able to learn from this because I have no idea what I'm doing. Portrait.
We're gonna talk you through it. It's easy.
All right. Oh
And,
boy.
yeah, you don't have to fill, well, there's some things you have to fill in. There you go.
Sam, you'll know what I'm doing.
And most people are board member, but Jerry, if you could just show, there is a, if you click that again, there is a code for parent. So most people will be picking parent.
I guess I could pick parent too.
Yep, you can leave board member, but that's fine.
No.
Excellent.
Even it's just like applying for a mortgage. Well, I'm sure that's happened to people before.
We at least know it's secure, right, Dr. Larkin?
Oh, I know what's wrong. Enough.
Okay, so this is the important page here. So these are all the competencies that you can choose from, or as you can see top left, you could add your own if you think of something different. Now, Dr. Larkin, I know we have you on the spot right here. If you just want to pick 5 real quickly, you can go back to this later and change it, but maybe just to take people through, you just have to click on it and you'll see it, it'll shade it.
Okay, since I'm at a school committee meeting, I'm going to pick conflict resolution,
Awesome.
civic literacy, confidence. Do they have fear? No. Perseverance, problem solving. All right.
Awesome. Now, if you go to the bottom again, hit continue. And there you do, you have it. So that describes the ones you pick, and you can go back in and change these. And if you want to see it in a graphic sense, put hit select visual, and then click on either one of those, which one you might find more appealing. Then hit continue. No, okay, you only, yeah, pick one of them, okay. And then hit submit and generate PDF. And there you go. You have your portrait of a graduate with a list of the skills that go with the ones you picked and a graphic of that. But at the same time, all that data was sent into Battelle for Kids. So it's now part of the Tiverton collection. And that's as easy as it is for a parent to join us in this important task. So we ask everyone to do it tonight. You saw that I think we timed that it was less than 5 minutes. It's not too complicated. We're going to send out very detailed directions as you went through it this evening, along with a video that Ms. Delcourt created. And we're hoping that every parent of the 1,800 students who attend our school system will do this. And again, as you heard me say, we will reach out to all town boards, the police department, the fire department, some clergy members, and all that data will go in with all of our staff and all of our students. And sometime in May, we will come back to you with what came out as the top 5 or 6 for Tiverton. And we will begin the process of making that our portrait of a graduate. So exciting times.
Is it, how many characteristics can they pick?
You can pick 6, 5 or 6. You're not really limited.
Okay,
May I say something?
sure.
I did mine yesterday. so I just went down the columns, chose what I thought was important. And then when I did my graphic piece, it took the first 5 or 6 that I picked, but it seemed like it put them, that's how they put them in order of the importance. Like the first 6 that I chose, they did. If I had known that's the way it was going to be, I might have changed my order of selection. In other words, if I think I chose one I chose was communication. If that was going to be my number 1, should I have selected that at first?
No, it really, anything that you chose goes into the big database. And so say you pick communication, that gets an equal, like 1 vote from Elaine Pavo.
Okay.
And then you might join then 100 parents and 200 students who pick the same thing. And at the end, we're going to look for the top 5 vote getters, so to say, out of all the companies for all the people who did this.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
In the total, you can pick is 6, or you can pick even more than that.
You can pick even more. You're just putting extra votes in, but as a school district, we're going to focus on 5 or 6 as our portrait of a graduate. We feel that when you narrow it to 5 or 6, you can really implement it in your courses, in your grade levels, and make it a really significant experience for our students.
Got it.
And Peter, if I may, I just want to show everyone that to Ms. Pavo's point, you can actually maneuver your items in that order. Once you're in the area where you can, you've selected your visual, you can actually move your competencies in the order of priority, as you can see there. And then last, one of the things that I think is also of value is if you don't see a competency that you necessarily want to, you can add your own. So that's another powerful tool.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say, Dr. Larkin, thank you for being brave enough to show the entire community what this is and how it can be done. And again, people watching this evening, you're going to receive from us a very detailed document showing all the steps that Dr. Larkin demonstrated tonight with the video. And we hope that you'll participate in this and be part of what's making a difference for this school system.
Okay, any questions or comments from the rest of the committee? Mrs. Farnworth?
No, I don't have any questions. I look forward to taking a ride through it myself. I won't do it on the screen and bore you all, though.
Thank you.
Mrs. Polish?
All set, thanks.
And Mr. Dakotas?
No, but a comment. I enjoyed watching you go through that presentation, Dr. Larkin. That was fun. But thank you.
Fun is exactly how I would describe it. Mrs. Pavo?
I did mine and I enjoyed doing it. It was pretty neat.
Lane gets the gold star.
Yeah.
No, Jerry gets the gold star.
Yeah. Mr. Farley? Ghosting us. All right.
Terribly sorry. I actually just had one comment. So first of all, I think this is very useful. And I applaud you for that. I think just for future reference, there probably could have been a tad more notifications for the students. I can speak for myself, and I can speak for a few of my peers, in which in saying when we did this, last week, we didn't really know what was going on. We answered to the best of our ability, of course. I get it now. I didn't really get it in the moment, but that's just a comment, and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Life lesson is you can always be held accountable for things that you don't know what you're doing. Right. Any questions from our administrators or teachers? And anything from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so look forward to seeing what this all generates. So I think our next item is 7E, the 2022-2023 school calendar draft. Dr. Sanquioni.
Great. Thank you, Dr. I want to show the school committee this potential school calendar for next year and potentially maybe get your approval for this evening. Julie, I'm going to need to share my screen again.
You are all set.
Thank you. Okay, and so I know you can see that there, and let me speak to this calendar a little bit. It really parallels what we did this year, but I'll point out a couple changes that I want to make you aware of. Last year, you may recall, we had one day of school before we broke for the Labor Day weekend. And we know that some of our students then struggle coming back after being out of school for 4 days. So this year we want to have school starting on a Thursday, which will be September 1st, and then Friday the 2nd, and then go into the long Labor Day weekend. Because it's an election year this year, unfortunately, we're going to have to cancel school for 2 days. One for the primary on September 13th and one for election on November 8th. So, that's what it is. And we'll work with that calendar as best we can. We're following the state calendar for PD days. So again, these are critical days for the development of our staff. You can see we put them in, our students would be in distance learning on those days. So again, it really parallels what's been out there, the typical break at December, the typical break at February, and with school ending on June 16th. The one thing I want to point out, and this is going to have an impact on maybe some of our staff and so forth. It's the April vacation. As you see where I'm showing you here. It's typically the 3rd week of April. It's always has been. Patriots Day would have been the 17th. The RIDE calendar that came out that it's asking all districts to adopt has the April vacation now the 2nd week. So they've attached it to Good Friday. There's some wisdom to that. So you're off Good Friday, then you continue on with a week out. And so when they ask communities to adopt this, I would say right now that out of all the communities around Allen, about 30 to 28, more like 28 have adopted the statewide calendar, which I'm recommending for Tiverton. But there are 5 communities who are going to take the 3rd week off. And so that's going to divide us a little bit. Now we're recommending the 2nd week because Portsmouth, Little Compton, Middletown, Newport, the communities most connected to us and maybe where a lot of our staff live, will have the same weeks off. But I need to make people aware that Barrington, Bristol Warren, East Providence, North Smithfield, and Smithfield have all chosen the 3rd week of April. So if we have staff who live in those communities, and have children, they're going to have 1 week off. Their children are going to have the other week off. So that's one of the reasons why I'd like to see the school committee approve this as soon as possible so that we can get that information out and ask our staff to make those adjustments. It's unfortunate that, we're put in that situation. But again, I feel like we're with the majority of Rhode Island communities by taking the 2nd week off. And certainly all the communities in the East Bay have taken that same week. But the rest of the calendar really plays out the same way it has this year. So with that being shared with you, I'm going to stop the share, answer any questions, and seek your approval.
I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so I'll open it up to discussion by the committee. Mrs. Farnworth?
Hi, Dr. Sanquioni, could you put it back on the screen, please?
Julie, you want to give me that back?
Or whoever had.
Yeah. Again. There you go.
Thank you. First is really a question. New Year's Day in 2023 falls on a Sunday.
Mhm.
I know that typically in my world, the business world, we will more than likely be celebrating it on the Monday. Typically, if there's a Sunday holiday, it's celebrated on the Monday. Is that something that was considered here?
It was, and we spoke to our unions. We're going to celebrate it on the Friday so that we can come back into school on that Monday and not lose another day of school. Which is why December 30th is in purple. So for any full-time staff members, that would be their holiday.
And so they get it, what is that extra pay?
No, that, I mean, if you're a full-time employee, you don't automatically have those days off. You take vacation days. And basically, we're saying on the 30th, that's a holiday for you.
Okay. Okay. All right, good to know. Thank you. I just don't know how the family's going to feel about this. A lot of the parents are going to be off on the 2nd. I think it's something to continue to consider.
I can share with you, most schools are going to be in, because again, if you look where we end, our last day of school is the 16th of June. And if we take any more days off, we're going to shoot into the night. Well, the 19th now is actually a holiday. That's Juneteenth.
Right.
So we're going to try to, we want to get these days in now so we don't have to extend any deeper into June.
Yeah, no, I agree on that front. I just, like I said, I have a lot of concern over that January 2nd date. I would normally, I know there was some pushback last year with regard to starting before Labor Day. I think that happens every time we do plan for that. And I think had it not been for the 2 election days that were forced to close, I might have hoped for a post Labor Day start this year. But in order, again, I agree with you, getting the kids out as early as possible in June is critical. I know the education that's happening earlier in the year is probably a lot more intense than what's happening in the 2nd week of June. So, I do get it. The other question that I have, though, are you aware of any plans for RIDE to put limits on distance learning days at all?
You have to submit an application every year to RIDE for the days that you're going to take as DL and have that approved. Ours is certainly approved because we're a 1-to-1 district and we offer the internet to all families. So I don't expect, and the fact that they put these days in the calendar for schools to take as PD days. So right now we're at 1, 2, 3, 4. We're at 5, which I know will be approved for.
Okay. And last question, I promise. What about the snow day piece of this? Is there any discussion at all for a change in the approach to snow days by RIDE? Or even legislature?
Again, they leave it to us as a district to submit an application to, if we want to take snow days and make them educational days. I will again submit that application. I feel confident that now that our staff is well trained in this, that we can execute those days. Again, I think they're valuable instead of, again, putting those days in June. And as you saw, we'd be going into deep June for every day we take. So as long as we submit the application and can demonstrate that students have access to technology and families have access to technology, we will be approved.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Mrs. Pavo,
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Dakotas.
Dr. Sanquioni's February vacation still a stronghold? I know we went away from it years ago and then we brought it back. Is that still something that the staff feels strongly about?
I believe so. And the thing, Mike, is that because now it's on the statewide calendar, so for every one of our staff members who has a student in it, maybe another district or most likely in another district, they're going to be off. And that makes it complicated for us if we're back in school. We can go back a few years ago when Tiverton did. It was one of my first couple of years here. And you can see that those days we came back, we had high absences. And that was generated, I believe, because parents had to take care of their kids who are out of school because most other districts take the full week.
Okay, it's good to know. And if anyone had that on their mind, what, maybe why, then now they know. Because I was wondering. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Ms. Polish.
No questions, but I like that RIDE has adopted a statewide calendar for a lot of reasons. It works really, really well. So I would like to continue using it.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, did the other districts decide to go to the 3rd week?
Are you asking me why they did that?
Yeah.
I haven't spoken to those superintendents. I don't know the why. I surmise that because it's just tradition and paradigms. That they, it's always been the third week. I mean, I know Massachusetts will take the third week because Patriots Day is there. So that also impacts any of our staff members who may live in Massachusetts. But that-
Okay. And last year, we wound up changing the calendar because of the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, one but not the other, I think. I don't remember. How do they line up this year? Is that going to be an issue again?
I don't believe so. They're not early in the school yet. Rosh Hashanah, which is the holiday that was in our calendar last year, now is in October.
Okay. All right. And that's right, because it was the first day of school. That's what the sort of concern was. All right. Any questions or thoughts from our administrators? Wisely keeping silent. Anything from the public?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the calendar. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Polish,
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth,
Yes,
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes,
Mr. Dakotas.
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, somebody's snoring. All right. I'm getting some sort of feedback. That's not my dog. All right. The next item, I believe, is the policy.
That is correct, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, next is 7S, first policy, reading policy number 739, school committee agendas. Ms. Farnworth, you want to take this one?
sure, thank you very much. Dr. Larkin, I had asked the school committee to have this policy subcommittee take a look at tightening up on our agenda policies. And this really is in an effort to be as transparent as possible around this particular topic. So the policy subcommittee did meet, and what came from it was what you see tonight. We're recommending a new policy, which would be numbered 739, titled School Committee Agenda. It would replace 3 existing policies if approved. It would be replacing 740, which is procedure for addressing the board, 741, agenda, and 742, preparation of the agenda. The reason it would replace the 3 is essentially the new policy 739, among other things, is a compilation of the 3 of those existing policies. We took, the primary parts of those policies and moved them over to this new one. We fine-tuned it, and I will be happy to take you through the highlights. First of all, this policy, the new policy, it applies to everyone, including members of the school committee and the administration, which is not the case today. This policy will stipulate the deadline of 5 business days, or what we typically would see as Wednesday before a Tuesday meeting, for anyone to request placement on the agenda. This new policy would require that the requester fill out a form, which is contained in the appendix, to have their request, to make their request to be placed on the agenda. The new policy stipulates that when backup will be made available to members of the school committee, which would be what it typically is today, 2 business days, or what we normally have is Friday before a Tuesday meeting. And what's new in this policy that's not in the other 2 is an appeals process for denial of placement on the agenda in the case of a school committee member or anyone outside of the school committee. Again, we do have the appendix to the policy included in your packet. And I do want to thank Mrs. Mendes for prettying it up for me, because I'm not a whiz at Word. But essentially what it is I took this from the town council policy, and I think I had alluded to that previously, that for each of their agenda items, you know in advance who made the request, you know, really what the summary and the detailed description of those requests are. So I will, at this point, stop and open it up for questions from members of the committee.
Sure. Great. Thank you, Diane. And I'm always forget. So Deb, you're still on policy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you both, and Dr. Sanquioni. So Mr. Dakotas, any questions, comments?
No, I appreciate the policy subcommittee doing this, and I think getting a little more clarity, excuse me, for the public is good. I like taking it from our council. It just makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Mike. That really was one of the driving, driving forces behind it, was just trying to, be as transparent as we can and try to help all of us, but also try to help the public, what's going to be on, what do they need? Are they looking for us to vote? And it really just helps everybody be, prepared when something comes before us. So that's a great point.
Okay. Mrs. Pava
I'm all set.
and Mrs. Polish, any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. So this is a first reading. It returns on the next meeting, at which point we'll take a vote. Any questions or comments from our student representative, Mr. Farley?
No questions, just a comment. I appreciate the the continuity again. Mr. Dakotas, you mentioned it, the continuity with the town council, and it just makes it a lot easier for citizens to apply. And I also appreciate the fact that there's an appeals process. Allows a bit more balance of power. So thank you.
Okay. And any questions or comments from our administrators? And anything from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Yes, we first have Lori Gaddis Barrett, who would like to be unmuted. She is from 210 Elmdale Road in Tiverton. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lori.
Thanks, Julie. Hello, Tiverton School Committee. I come before you tonight to speak on policy number 739. And the reason that it has captured my interest is because I attended your last school committee meeting on March 1st, where the procedures for addressing the school committee on the mask policy were markedly different from your written published bylaws and from your normal procedure. I did follow those procedures to the best of my ability. And I understand that Ms. Delcourt is filling in and is new, and they're, it's possible, right? Everybody's in their swing and doing their best. It's possible for mistakes to be made, but these are critical mistakes and they have an impact. And when a member of the public appears before you and they want to speak, it's critically important that they are able to speak.
Julie, you can mute that person, or
What's up, baby girl?
So I think we may have been hacked.
Perhaps.
Okay.
I think I removed that individual. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Nice job,
Okay,
Julie.
thanks. This is still Lori
So-
Gaddis. I'd like to reclaim my time if I could.
Yeah, sure. So just, Lori, just to be clear, what you're speaking about is being able to address the committee. That's not actually what we're talking about right now. We're talking
Yes,
about
it is, Dr. Larkin. Yes, it is. The school committee bylaws, what you're actually talking about is what is happening when a person wants to get on the agenda and speak to the school committee. And that is exactly what I'm speaking about.
Lori, could I just clarify something though? There's a difference between filling out an agenda request and asking for an item to be on the agenda,
Yeah,
or just coming to a meeting and speaking on an agenda item, or the public forum. So they're like kind of three different rules for each segment. So we have a public forum at the beginning that anybody can come and speak on anything they want. Then we have the agenda items that we've set beforehand, and we only can speak to those agenda items per open meetings law. And then we have this, which is, we're trying to put a policy together so that anybody that wants to ask for an agenda. So for instance, you could ask for an agenda. Once we pass this policy, you could fill out an agenda request and ask to speak about our meeting procedures for allowing comment, for instance. But right now, what we're talking about is this particular policy of being able to get, what you need to do to get put on an agenda. Does that make sense?
And thank you, Member Palish. Yes, I do. I understand that you're trying to collapse or collate three different policies about how to get on the agenda. I understand that this has been a topic, or I hesitate to use the word controversial, because I understand that there have
good
been
hesitation. Go ahead.
I understand that there have been previous attempts to place items on the agenda. And I think the overarching point that I want to make is that members of the public don't feel heard. It's very, very tricky to get an item on the agenda, or even to speak to any item on the agenda. For example, earlier this evening, I was admitted into the Zoom meeting, through no fault of anybody, or we're going to assume good intentions. But I came in just as open forum was closed. So, and I understand that we're not talking about that right now. I just want to give that as an example of, as we are, or as the Tiverton School Committee addresses some of the policies and some of the bylaws, it's really critically important that those bylaws are noted on the agenda that's filed on the Secretary of State website to avoid confusion and reduce conflicts between parents and members of the school committee. And I appreciate your time tonight. I know I only have 3 minutes. And I understand that there was a little drama before then. But, I think it's really important. If we can't communicate, we can't cooperate. And in the spirit of cooperation, I would just leave you with those thoughts, that those policies really need to be tightened up and looked at and adhered to when we post those agenda to the Secretary of State website. Thank you.
I think one of the things too, Dr. Larkin, is to having people in going back to live is going to make certainly a big difference, which we will be doing at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's true. And, I think you also have to kind of understand a couple things, maybe three. One is these are actually business meetings of the committee, and they are not public hearings. So actually there are times when the town council has a public hearing and there's specific policy, and I think probably even statute, that kind of governs that. We are actually pretty open, I would say, in allowing public comment, especially in sort of live meetings. It's a little bit more difficult in Zoom for all the obvious reasons. So, so there's also a very different, there's a big difference between what is called a public hearing and a public meeting. And oftentimes you'll find, if you attend some of the town council meetings, they don't allow public comment, whereas we usually open it up to the public about every single item. So.
Thank you, Dr.
Anyway.
Larkin. I am certified in open meetings laws in my own community. And I appreciate your comments, and I applaud the Tiverton School Committee for allowing open comment on individual agenda items. That's exactly what should be happening. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anyone else, Ms. Delcourt?
Yes. The next speaker we have is Denise Miller. And Denise, if you can unmute and just state your address to help me out, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
My name is Denise Miller. My address is 47 Tanglewood Drive. I'm here speaking today about the proposed policy 739. After last week's meeting, I was disappointed with the conduct of some of the members of this committee. There is a growing concern amongst the community of Tiverton that members of this committee are not acting in good faith of the office they were voted to. As a member of the committee, personal bias should not be a part of the decision-making process. It appears that when a parent or a member of this community disagrees with the members of the board or have something to say that the committee has a difference of opinion or doesn't want the public to hear, the parent or member of the community is censored. The proposed policy 739 is not a community-centric policy. It lacks the transparency needed when a member of the public wishes to address the board. What are the guidelines the chair is using to determine what is appropriate to be heard before the committee? Are the guidelines free of bias and personal opinion? The policy will only divide the community even further. And I implore you guys, as you, the member of the committee, to remember your code of ethics. Accept and encourage variety of opinions from and communication with all parts of the community, and make public relevant institutional information in order to promote communication and understanding between the school system and the community. Thank you.
Anyone else, Mrs. Delcourt?
Yes, then there's Dennis Miller who would like to speak.
That's not.
Good evening.
Oh.
It's Daniel.
It's actually Daniel Miller, 47 Tanglewood, Tiverton, Rhode Island. It's apparent that the school committee agenda 739 is a clear attempt to limit the community's ability to speak at school committee meetings. As it currently stands, the public is only given 3 minutes to speak, to express their concerns and offer solutions. As a taxpayer, this proposal tells me that our money is always welcome, but our voices are only welcome pending the approval of the chair of the school committee. Policies like this do nothing to promote trust, unity, transparency, and teamwork. Our community is best served when all voices are heard. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 9.
Dr.
No,
Larkin,
I'm sorry. Yep.
if I
Diana?
may, I don't agree with what either of Mr. Denise or Mr. Daniel Miller had to say with regard to the new policy. I think quite the opposite is actually the case. First, I will say it's always the duty of the chair to set the agenda. That's been established here for decades. This is not new with this policy. That has always been the case. And that is pretty normal for any elected body. Someone has to set the agenda. What's added to this agenda that wasn't in place before is an appeals process should someone be a denied placement. So I really do take issue with and disagree with the comments that were made by the members of the public this evening with regard to this policy.
Me too, but people are entitled to their opinions.
Sure.
So we are moving on to item 8A, confirm the FY23 budget request. Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Julie, I'm going to share my screen. Thank you. Can you see that? No.
No.
No. All right. Let's.
No.
No. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right. You can see that now, right? So per our budget calendar, this is the last meeting before a final number is due to the budget committee to submit. And the school committee will need to reconfirm that number tonight. I'm not going to go through this whole budget presentation again. I'll just bring you to what's most poignant this evening. And that is our FY23 executive summary. So again, FY22, where we are now, 32 million. You last voted a 4% increase. We're looking at state aid. That's still undefined, so I'll leave that alone. But the request of the town, the number that you voted, excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm just going to use this way. Was this 33,000 number? And if the school committee still feels the same right now, that would be the number to reconfirm and have me send that off to the budget committee. I sent you an email earlier this week. It looks like we're going to be with the budget committee on March 24th for the first time. So I believe that's the information you need right now. It's important to just remind the committee that, as you know, even with a 4% increase, we're looking at a structural deficit. We still may have to make some cuts, or you're going to need to use one-time money. And there may be some options to do that with fund balance and ESSER 3 funds. But again, it's important to recognize and make that presentation that even with 4%, we're still well below. And you all know the story behind that. This goes back many, many years when zero after zero was given and a structural deficit was started for the first time. And that structural deficit just keeps carrying with us. And until it's addressed, it's probably going to be in place for a while. So I'll pause there. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the request as proposed by the superintendent.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor to discussion on the part of the committee. Mrs. Farnworth?
So just to be clear, our request was and remains a request for $531,278. Is that correct?
Yes, and as I can see, Amy's confirming that, and that was the number you voted last time.
Okay, thank you. I thought I saw something else on one of the slides, but I didn't when I reviewed it earlier, so I must be just getting tired. Sorry.
Ms. Farnworth, I believe that was reference information from the prior year. It was a very similar number. The 33,200,000 was from the prior year.
Was, yep. Thank you.
That's it, Diane?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Mr. Dakotas?
I feel like this is Groundhog Day. Other than that, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Pava?
No questions.
Mrs. Polish?
No questions.
Any of our committee or administrators? Mr. Farley?
No questions.
And anything from the public, Ms. Delcourt?
Yes, Dr. Larkin, we have Lori Gaddis Barrett again from 210 Elmdale Road in Tiverton. You can unmute yourself, Laurel.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate the additional opportunity. I was wondering if a member of the school committee could direct Julie to put a link to the online budget in the chat so that it could be reviewed. And my specific question is about the legal expenses that the school committee, my question that I'm looking to seek for more information about is actual versus planned. And I am also looking for information. It's my understanding that the school committee is represented by Ben Scungio. And I'm looking for more information about his legal expenses.
So Dr. I could speak.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't know if Amy has specifics, but can she email you, Amy, to get more specific?
Yeah, what are you
Yeah.
looking for, Lori?
So I perused the school committee website and the town financial referendum website. I didn't see a copy of the 2023 proposed budget. As you guys were discussing, I didn't see that available online. The reason I wanted to review it is because I wanted to take a look at the legal expenses. And the reason I wanted to take a look at the legal expenses is because I'm interested in the actual versus plans. It's my intent to submit a public records request for more information about those legal expenses. But for right now, I can't find any information about the budget that's going to be sent to the town council that represents that 4% increase. And I would very much appreciate it if somebody could tell me where to locate that online so that I can review it further.
Just for clarification, Lori, our budgets actually go to the budget committee because in Tiverton, we have a 11-member budget committee that looks at the budgets, our budget, and looks at the town council budget. And then they come up with a recommendation that's presented at the financial town referendum. So we don't actually send a budget to the council. But good point about being able to find it online though.
Thank you, Member Palish. I appreciate that. And I apologize if I misspoke that it went directly from the school committee to the town council. Wherever it goes, somebody somewhere has a spreadsheet that itemizes that 4% increase.
There's a line item budget that has been before this committee, so they're public documents. I'm sure Ms. Roderick can send them to you, or I mean, if there's something very specific that you want, you can either request them from her or I guess do a public records request too. Ms. Roderick?
If I could clarify, so in terms of the FY23 budget, we do have a proposed amount, but we will not have an actual for FY23 because that year has not occurred yet. So is my understanding correct in that you would like a current year to date for FY22 legal expenses?
Yes, I'm interested in the budgeted amount for 2022 and the actual amount for 2022 and the proposed amount for 2023. And I can find none of that online.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's just sort of level of granularity that we don't necessarily post, but maybe the best thing to do would be to send an email to Dr. Sanquioni and Ms. Roderick, specifically what you're looking for, and they can answer you or point you in the right direction, or
even that detailed budget that we had, I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, maybe, Amy, that went, had all of the summary, but then had all of the detail behind it, maybe, just put that online.
Yeah,
sure. Whatever was in your packet document is probably going to satisfy my curiosity.
Okay.
And I would direct that request to Dr. Sanquioni.
Yeah. So to ask for specific records or a public document from the school district, we are not I'm not the keeper of the documents. Deb's not, Diane's not, nobody is. It is the school administration. So if there's a specific piece of information you want, and it was a document that was, say, introduced in a public meeting, then you have a right to it. Even if it wasn't introduced in a public meeting, it may be something that is supposed to be made available to the public if they request it. If you feel like the request is, if you make a request and they say, no, you're not entitled, like, I don't know, what we spend on somebody's healthcare, you may not be entitled to, or sort of a specific tuition to an out-of-state placement, of a given student, that's kind of protected information. So there's stuff that is disclosable by the district and stuff that's not. So then you can go the route of whatever you want to do.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. I appreciate that. I am just looking for the budget that was discussed in your public meeting. And then I can drill down from there. I know what to do.
All right. So a motion has been made. Any other comments from the public? Okay, so a motion's been made. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then the next item is a review of the dates and deadlines in the budget process.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Larkin. I'm gonna bring that up for you. Okay, so we're really coming to the end of this here. As you can see, submit final budget request to the board, to the budget committee that is due on the 19th. You just voted that this evening, so I will definitely forward that on to members of the chair of the budget committee tomorrow morning. You can see the other thing that's highlighted there, submit optional budget proposal and resolutions to that town clerk that's due on the 14th of April. Not on this calendar, but again, I'll just reaffirm an email I sent you all earlier this week. Our first meeting with the budget committee will be on the 24th, and they're predicting we'll be there twice. And so following that up the following Thursday, which would be March 31st. So I'll pause there.
Okay, any, so I need to get this bigger for myself. So I'll open the floor to questions by the committee. Mr. Dakotas?
No, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Pavo,
I'm all set. Thank you.
Ms. Polish,
Oh, agree, self-explanatory.
and Ms. Farnworth.
Beautiful and right on point. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from our administrators? And from the public, Mrs. Delcourt?
Not at this time, Dr. Larkin.
Okay, I see Sam has dropped off. Hopefully he's doing his homework. All right. That brings us to sort of item 9, announcement, scheduled meetings, reports. Our next meeting is March 22nd. We have the accreditation report from the high school. On the agenda item, April 12th, we have the strategic plan update. I think we should, we also have the meetings with the town council, or not town council, budget committee. When are those again, Peter?
The 24th and the 31st. And we will certainly add that on to future agenda items.
Okay. All right. And I would add at least to the 12th and maybe the 22nd, you know, whether or not we submit the whole process of submitting a separate budget is still unexplored. Maybe we need to discuss that on the 22nd too, I would say.
Oh, excuse me.
Anything else from anybody else? Okay.
Dr. Larkin, just because I just found it, right on the front of the Tiverton schools.org website is a public records request for anybody that has anything that they need. There's actually a link right to it. Just wanted to point that out quick.
You mean the form to make a public records request?
Yep, and explains the APRA policy, etc.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, so I'm going to ask for motion to move into executive session under Rhode Island General Law 4246(5)(a)(1) and 2. Job performance, character, physical or mental health, teacher non-renewals, and discussion session pertaining to RGB contract.
I'll make that motion.
I will second that motion.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish,
Yes.
Ms. Farnworth,
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas,
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we are now in executive.